Our reading comes from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1, verses 21 through 28. This is the second story or encounter in A Day in the Life of Jesus from the Gospel of Mark. In it, Jesus teaches, heals, and the crowd reacts. Something very significant happens. The status of Jesus has at the beginning of the story changes. Hear these words. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. Just then there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying out with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed, and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. It used to be if you got engaged or divorced, were widowed, or started dating or stopped dating, you told your friends in person or maybe on the phone, maybe even a letter. Now, if you're on social media, you can do it with a few clicks. There are 11 relationship statuses on Facebook alone from which to choose. You could choose a new status every day just to keep people guessing. Wouldn't that be a hoot? I was thinking about that. There are a host of life arenas in which our status changes, from undergraduate to graduate, from middle schooler to high schooler. One day you're a legal resident, the good old US of A, and the next you're an illegal resident because the card you began the renewal process for 2 years ago didn't show up, and that was after numerous calls to the State Department. And yes, I recently heard that story. One day you're unemployed, the next you get a call, you're hired, yay, change of status. And the opposite happens too. And we all know that one day, you're doing one thing and something happens and you're something else the next day. One day you're a person without cancer and the next day you're a cancer patient. Change of status. The change of status transitions we experience in this life are legion, and they can be exhausting. Frankly, our culture does not help us much with ways to mark even the most regular change of status events. The story I read today from the Day in the Life of Jesus introduces the main character as Jesus of Nazareth. Well, that's a foregone conclusion, isn't it? But it is a critical naming of who Jesus was in relationship to his world. That names all of the claims on him. In the time of Jesus, there was no such thing as an individual. Today, we consider an individual's makeup to be the key to understanding them. We think individuals are unique. The sort of individualism of our modern culture in North America, particularly the United States, would be anathema to people in the time of Jesus, including Jesus himself. Every person was understood to be embedded in others. When Jesus shows up in the big city of Capernaum, his relationship to his world is clearly stated by none other than an unclean spirit. It is also astounding that it is the demon who recognizes him. Nobody else knows this kid from the sticks. And the demon recognizes him not only as Jesus of Nazareth, but also as the Holy One of God. Change of status from no one to Jesus, how he fits in the world, to how Jesus fits into the cosmos. Two things here. Jesus is acting in a way that one New Testament scholar says has just knocked everyone's social compass askew. Now what are we supposed to do? This kid from the sticks, how are we supposed to act or respond? So we don't know how to do this. Craftsman's son isn't expected to speak up in public, yet here Jesus did, and according to the story, he does so with authority. And then two, the demon who proclaims this new status, the identity of Jesus as the Holy One of God. That's an upgrade. That's a big upgrade. And it comes from an unclean spirit. Now, doesn't that seem odd? Wouldn't it be like somebody like me, right? A religious person who's studied would recognize Jesus? Jesus baffles the crowd but provokes a demon. I was fascinated with the take that Reverend Benjamin Duholm has on this text. He was writing Christian Century last month. He serves a Lutheran church in Dallas. He wrote, "It is the demon who speaks more truly of Jesus than his adversaries or even his followers. The insight is for us, is for the reader, the hearer. Inside the story, this is not a rhetorical choice, but a fascinating demonstration. It's no great shock when somebody willing to be persuaded is persuaded. But the testimony of a foe, that's different. Churches today can seem to be more intent on scrambling for the persuadable worshiper, perhaps disengaged or disenchanted with the last church they went to, but curious enough to be won over by a new one, then we are reaching the truly non-believer. But the most dramatic and authoritative responses are exactly the ones we aren't looking for. For those, the most well-trained and sensitive scribe can be no more than a medium or bystander for words and power that come from somewhere else entirely. Like from the woman walking by my house yesterday. The glory of God being revealed in this person, Jesus, happens in places we don't expect, through people, even people we suspect don't deserve to be revealing. A lot of scribes like me and Mike interpret texts, we teach theology, and we manage the store. Too many of us scribes get confused about the medium and the message. The message is the good news of Jesus, the Holy One of God. The medium is the way in which each of us lives out that good news. Marshall McLuhan, for those of you who were born after 1970 may not know that name, Marshall McLuhan coined the phrase, "the media is the message," back in 1964. Author Parker Palmer wrote of teachers, this is probably the 90s, that teachers are the curriculum. And at the ordination of Beth Parker, I borrowed that notion and told her that more than any of the programs, worship services that she did, events, service projects that she plans, that she is the curriculum. You might think I'm kind of mixing things up, but just stick with me for a minute. There is pressure on scribes to embody, more than the rest of the body of Christ, to embody the presence of Christ. There's even, in some Christian traditions, the expectation that this is a very real physical reality. And when a scribe falls, they fall from the distance of the pedestal upon which people put us. And some of us have willingly tall pedestals. Very dangerous. And while I believe that leaders, lay and clergy alike, must stabilize ourselves in the presence of Christ and that we are responsible for representing that presence. Is called the priesthood of all believers, not just the people wearing the duds. Embodying even that to the best of our ability, that presence, we are not that presence. In the upcoming Lenten study, Embracing an Adult Faith, I hope you'll all sign up for that, New Testament scholar Marcus Borg says, Jesus is the decisive epiphany or disclosure of what can be seen of God in a human life. That is his status for us as Christians. The unclean spirit in the story recognized that status. Jesus demonstrates his standing also in the cosmic order, in the hierarchy of the cosmos, by ordering the demon to be silent and to come out of the man. We're invited to change our status by this Holy One, to see that our life can also disclose something of sacred presence in the world around us as we let this Holy One invade our hearts and permeate them with the love for which and in which we were born. To know, as Jesus knew himself to be, beloved. I think there's almost no harder work in the world than to live from that. From not enoughness to beloved. From tired and worn out to beloved. From uncertain about the future to beloved. From grief-stricken to beloved. The thing is we're always beloved in all the states and stages of our living, through all our transitions, dead ends, beginnings, and in-betweens. Always beloved. And the more we practice this presence of the Holy One of God, the more we will perceive, I believe, and be able to point out the disclosure of what can be seen of God in life around us, in each other, and in our living. The more we practice the presence of the Holy One of God, the more we might know and accept our change of status as beloved. Jan Richardson is poet and United Methodist clergy, and she wrote a poem of this transforming. Begin here, beloved. Is there any other word needs saying, any other blessing could compare with this name, this knowing? Beloved comes like a mercy to the ear that has never heard it. Comes like a river to the body that has never seen such grace. Beloved comes wholly to the heart, aching to be new. Comes healing to the soul, wanting to begin again. Beloved, keep saying it. And though it may sound strange at first, watch how it becomes part of you. How it, as if you never could have known yourself, anything else, as if you could ever have been other than this. Beloved. According to the letter to the Colossians, we are chosen ones. This is not conceit. This is calling. The change of status has always been there. The change was not God's, but ours to claim. And with that claim comes a responsibility, a ministry, a community, a calling.